Hi, I'm Sandy Irwin. I'm the director of the Royal Oak Public Library, and we are out here in Centennial Commons because the Commons is a place where people get to share ideas that may inspire other people or that may cause friction in society. I think that Commons is a really great place to read out from some banned books. I'm going to read a couple of things from This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson. So the first part I'm going to read is Lesson 1. Sometimes men like men. Sometimes women like women. Sometimes women like men and women. Sometimes men like women and men. Sometimes people don't like anyone. Sometimes a man might want to be a woman. Sometimes a woman might want to be a man. Sometimes people don't identify as a man or as a woman. Got that? It's really simple. I could end the lesson there, but I don't think a few pages make a very good book, so I suppose I should go into a bit more depth. And the author does. I have found this book really exciting and engaging. I'd like to share a couple other pieces. First, school probably hasn't taught you very much about what it's like to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, or questioning. You might have heard about famous gay people or seen same-sex couples on TV. You almost certainly know an LGBTQ plus person, even if you aren't aware of it. Like an alien invasion, we are already among you. We serve you in the post office. We teach you math. We make your hamburgers. So why don't we teach you about same-sex couples when we teach sex ed? Or that a lot of people choose their gender? Well, I was a PSHCE, Personal, Social, Health, and Citizenship Education teacher in the UK for a long time. And I always taught my students about these things, but not all schools do, and not all teachers know how. There's no training for this, I'm afraid. And so just reflect upon your own school's experience and what you may or may not have learned. That's for me. I also like to share things no one says ever. When did you realize you were straight? Does your mom know you're straight? When you have straight sex, is it one of you the woman? I have a straight friend. Would you like me to set you up on a date? It was so much fun. We went dancing at a straight club. I went to the cutest straight wedding this weekend. Do you think straight people should be allowed to have kids? I don't mind straight people kissing, but I wish they wouldn't rub our faces in it. Things no one says ever. I never hear those things. Finally, there's a handy little chart in here that's called fact or fiction. Stereotype. All gay men dress like gods and dance like Fred Astaire. Fact or fiction? Go to any gay club on a Saturday night, you'll see a sublime mixture of dad dancing, self-conscious shuffling, over-the-arm, arms aloft raving. Sometimes gay men dress well, some dress like David Hasselhoff. Stereotype. All gay women have short hair. Fact or fiction? Yes, gay women have a faulty version of the hair-growing gene. What do you think? Of course this isn't true. Lots of gay women have long hair and straight women have short hair. Stereotype. Gay men are pedophiles. Fact or fiction? Ah, this old chestnut. Some deeply homophobic people truly believe this is the case. Think about it. You know what gay men like? Big, hairy men. You know who have none of these attributes? Kids. Gay men like men. That's the whole point. Stereotype. Gay men always work as flight attendants or hairdressers. Fact or fiction? Some do, most don't. Stereotype. Gay women hate men. Fact or fiction? I imagine they'd hate men who said that to them, yes. Stereotype. Gay women are all desperate to have threesomes with men, just like in porn. Fact or fiction? This feeds into the age-old misconception that all gay people are waiting for is the right guy or girl to make them realize the error of their ways. Stereotype. Gay men are massive sluts. Fact or fiction? Firstly, we don't use that word because it's not very nice. We'll discuss this in much more detail later, but clearly this isn't true of all gay men. All trans people are gay. Two different things. If you draw a little Venn diagram, there will be a bit in the middle where the gay circle overlaps the trans circle, but that's not true of anything, right? Gay men all have HIV or AIDS. Let's sigh. Sadly, this is why a lot of older people are wary of gay men. The statement is wrong on about 50 levels, all of which are potentially dangerous. We will discuss the AIDS pandemic and STIs in much more detail later because they are important to gay culture. Gay women all have cats. Yes, all of them. It's how they plan to conquer the world. A platoon of lesbians with armored cats. Gay men are girls. Gay men are in fact men. Bisexual people people are hedging their bets. If this were the case, wouldn't we all do it? Transsexual people are cross-dressers. We discussed this in the section on being trans, so read the book so you learn more. Transgender people are sick. Sick to death of statements like that, yes. Trans people pose a threat in public bathrooms. There are no recorded cases of transgender people attacking anyone in public bathrooms. In fact, trans people are much more frequently victims of harassment and violence in restrooms. So those are just a few little things from This Book is Gay. If you'd like to learn more, I highly recommend you check it out from the public library.
Okay. Hello, I am LaSharman. I'm an adult services librarian here at the Royal Oak Public Library. And in celebration of Banned Books Week, I will be doing a reading from a couple of books that have been challenged. The first book I'm reading from is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. And this book was originally published in 1970. And it was banned for sexually explicit materials. The synopsis of the book, the story is about 11-year-old Nicola, a black girl in America whose love for its blonde, blue-eyed children can devastate all others. She prays for her eyes to turn blue so that she will be beautiful. This story is a nightmare at the heart of her yearning and the tragedy of the fulfillment. So I'm reading a scene to you that was one of the reasons that the book was challenged, and it's the scene of Nicola's father sexually abusing her. So it starts. So it was on a Sunday afternoon in the thin light of spring. He staggered home, reeling drunk, and saw his daughter in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, her small back hunched over the sink. Charlie saw her dimly and could not tell what he saw or what he felt. Then he became aware that he was uncomfortable. Next, he felt the discomfort dissolve into pleasure. The sequences of his emotions was revulsion, guilt, pity, then love. His revulsion was a reaction to her young, helpless, hopeless presence. Her back hunched that way, her head to one side, as though crouching from a permanent and unrelieved blow. Why did she have to look so whipped? She was a child, unburdened. Why wasn't she happy? The clear statement of her misery was an accusation. He wanted to break her neck, but tenderly. Guilt and impotence rose in violent duet. What could he do for her, ever? What give her? What say to her? What could a burned-out black man say to the hunchback of his 11-year-old daughter? If he looked into her face, he would see those haunted, loving eyes. The hauntedness would irritate him. The love would move him to fury. How dare she love him? Hadn't she had any sense at all? What was he supposed to do about that? Return it? What could callous hands produce to make her smile? What of his knowledge of the world and of life could be useful to her? What could his heavy arms and befuddled brain accomplish that would earn him his own respect, that would in turn allow him to accept her love? His hatred of her slimed in his stomach and threatened to become vomit. But just before the puke moved from anticipation to sensation, she shifted her weight and stood on one foot, scratching the back of her calf with her toe. It was a quiet and pitiful gesture. Her hands were going around and around a frying pan, scraping flecks of black into cold, greasy dishwater. The timid, tucked-in look of the scratching toe. That was what Pauline was doing the first time he saw her in Kentucky, leaning over a fence, staring at nothing in particular. The creamy toe of her bare foot scratching a velvet leg. It was such a small and simple gesture, but it filled him with a wondering softness, not the usual lust to part tight legs with his own, but a tenderness, a protectiveness, a desire to cover her foot with his hand and gently nibble away to itch from the calf with his teeth. He did it then and started falling into laughter. He did it now. The tenderness welled up in him and he sank to his knees, his eyes on the foot of his daughter. Crawling on all fours toward her, he raised his hand and caught the foot in an upward stroke. Pecola lost her balance and was about to careen to the floor. Charlie raised his other hand to her hips to save her from falling. He put his head down and nibbled at the back of her leg. His mouth trembled at the firm sweetness of the flesh. He closed his eyes, letting his fingers dig into her waist. The rigidness of her shocked body, the silence of her stunned throat, was better than Pauline's easy laughter had been. The confused mixture of memories of Pauline and the doing of a wild and weird thing excited him, and a bolt of desire ran down his genitals, giving it length and softening the lips of his aunt. Surrounding all of this lust was a border of politeness. He wanted to fuck her tenderly, but the tenderness would not hold. The tightness of her vagina was more than he could bear. His soul seemed to slip down to his guts and fly out into her, and the gigantic thrust he made into her then provoked the only sound she made, a hollow suck of air in the back of her throat, like the rapid loss of air from a circus balloon. Following the disintegration, the falling away of sexual desire, he was conscious of her wet, soapy hand on his wrist, the fingers clenching, but whether her grip was from a hopeless but stubborn struggle to be free or from some other emotion he could not tell. Removing himself from her was so painful. To him, he cut it short and snatched his genitals out of the dry harbor of her vagina. She appeared to have fainted. Charlie stood up and could only see her grayish panties, so sad and limp around her ankles. Again, the hatred mixed with tenderness. The hatred would not let him pick her up. The tenderness forced him to cover her. So when the child regained consciousness, she was lying on the kitchen floor under a heavy quilt, trying to connect the pain between her legs with the face of her mother looming over her. So I could definitely see how that would be hard for someone to read, but the reality is that's someone's experience. And what we do here in the library, we want people to be able to read other people's experience to know that these things happen in life, and it's not our place to censor this reading because we don't personally like it and we're personally, disgusted by something that we've read. But it doesn't mean that someone else can't read this book and be moved by the end result of what happens in this book. The next book I'm going to read is Dear Martin. This is a more recently published book, 2017, and it deals with some racial issues. The book is about Justice Allister. He's a high school senior who believes that his achievements will shield him from the problems of other African American teens still living in impoverished neighborhoods. He is the captain of the debate team at his nearly all-white prep school in Atlanta, and he plans to attend Yale. But to cope with the things that he starts to deal with in this novel, he starts writing letters to Dr. Martin Luther King. His 10 letters to the slain civil rights leader frame the book and the issues of race, class, justice, and teen angst that he grapples with. So the scene that I'm going to read out of this book is when the main character, Justice, and his friend kind of go on a little joyride in their area. Okay, I'll start at chapter 13. Just knows something was wrong the moment he climbed into Manny's car Saturday morning, which is kind of unfortunate because it's really a nice day. The guys are supposed to be hitting Stone Mountain, but if Manny's holy wife beater, flannel pajama pants, house slippers, and style are any indication, hiking isn't a real high thing to do on their to-do list. You mind if we just drive for a while? Manny asked Justice when he closes the door. Of course not, ma'am. What's going on? Justice gets his seatbelt fastened, and Manny pulls out of the lot. My folks got a call this morning. Mr. Mr. Christensen is pressing charges against me for assaulting his son. He takes his hand off the wheel to do the air quote. You serious, man? As a heart attack. I tried to get in touch with Jared, but Mr. Christensen answered his phone and told me not to call anymore. Said they'd take out a restraining order if I did. Justice is dumbfounded. Dog, that's some straight bullshit. You telling me, man, I've never seen my dad so fired up. Manny shakes his head. All those years, that man has looked me in my face and called me his other son. And this is what happened. I don't even know what to say, man. You know what? I really don't either. I've had my little awakening over the past week or whatever, but this is like, man, I wasn't prepared for this. All I can think about is the one socio-evo chat where SJ and Jared and me could do the same crime, but I'm likely to get the harsher punishment. You remember that? I do. How could you forget? Anyway, sorry about Stone Mountain. I just need to drive and clear my head a bit. All good, Manny. All good. Justice settles down into the seat and enjoys the wind in his face as Manny turns on some music. So this is the music playing. So catch the ball, nigga, shoot the shot. Put on them gloves, boy. Knock off your brother's block. Lace up them tracks, spikes. Get ready to run. Here comes the fun. Wait for the sound of the gun. End lyrics. This is the new Deuce Diggs, Justice adds. Yeah, dog, shit's popping. Crank that up. Manny turns it up so loud the whole car shakes from the bass. When the Range Rover rolls to a stop at a traffic light, Justice looks out the window to find the driver of a white Suburban. White dude, probably early 50s, giving him a dirty look. He turns down the music. Damn, dude over there is mugging hard. Manny checks the guy out and laughs. Homeboy's got no appreciation for a lyrical genius such as Deuce Diggs. Apparently not, Justice says, shifting in his seat. The way the guy's scowling at him reminds him a little too much of the incident. Man, those red lights are long as hell. You're right, dog. When it finally turns green, Manny turns the music back up. The white driver, the white Suburban, is riding alongside the guy now, and the driver seems pissed. This dude is giving me the creeps, Justice yells over the music. He's red as a pepper, and he keeps glaring at me with those bulgy eyeballs. I bet he's totally profiling us right now. Probably thinks we're drug dealers or something. Justice goes to his wrist, and Manny glances over and stops laughing. My bad, dog, he said. I didn't mean, sorry, I was thinking. It was all good. It's all good, Manny. You're probably right. They pull to a stop at 13th Street traffic light. Will you assholes turn that goddamn racket down? The guy in the Suburban shouts. Assholes, Justice says. How are we assholes? Manny leans over the center console to shout out Justice's window. What did you say, sir? I couldn't hear you over the music. The guy looks like he's about to ignite. I said turn that shit down. You weren't lying about him being red, Manny laughed. It's like all the blood in his body has rushed up into his face. Justice turns to the man again. What would Martin do? Just, maybe we should turn it down, Justin said. Man, please, this is my car, Manny said. I'm done bending over backwards to appease white people. He pushes a button on the steering wheel. The music gets louder. You worthless nigger sons of bitches, the guy shouts. I know that motherfucker didn't just say that I what say what I think he did, Manny said. Just heart jumps up between his ears. What would Martin do? What would Martin do? Forget that guy, Manny. Let's just stay calm. Nah, man, screw that. Manny leans over. Hey, fuck you, man, he shouts out the window, giving the man the finger. Manny, chill. Why is this damn light so long? Let's just turn it down and get away from this guy, all right? Justice leans forward to turn the knob down. Oh, shit, Manny shouts. Chapter 14. Bang, bang, bang. Somebody is shot. So the letter that this character Justice then writes to Martin, because now his friend has been shot as a result of this incident. His friend is dead. He writes to Martin, he's gone. Never did anything to anyone. Now Manny's gone. I can't do this anymore. So you can imagine a young person, a young African American young man, with his friend who's totally innocent, and he's shot by a white man. And why? For having his music loud. A lot of people in our society don't want their children, non-black people, to be exposed to the reality of African American life. But this is a story, and we all know that these incidences actually do happen. Innocent young black men shot by white men. And the interesting thing about this story, we get to see the perspective of a young black man who lives in a predominantly white area, where he thinks that his life he won't deal with this type of thing, because he's surrounded by well-to-do white people. He's like he's on the in crowd, he's doing good, but you see the realities of life can touch you no matter where you are, and that's what this book teaches young people. And I have one more reading, and this is from Jodi Picoult's book, 19 Minutes. This book came out in 2007. It was actually restricted, banned just to high school students who got parental permission. This book depicts a school shooting and contains a graphic sexual activity. This book's about a young girl in a relationship, and it turns out that the young man that she's with, that she was not a popular girl, but she winds up dating a guy who's in the popular crowd, and kind of subjects herself to some things within this relationship just so that she can stay in this relationship with him and get those accolades that a lot of young people feel that they're receiving when they're in the in crowd. So this particular scene is the month before the shooting. When you love someone, there's a pattern to the way you come together. You might not even realize it, but your bodies are choreographed. A touch on the hip, a stroke of the hair, a staccato kiss, breakaway, a longer one. His hand slipping under your shirt. It's routine, but not in the boring sense of the word. It's just the way you've learned to fit. And it's why, when you've been with the guy for a long time, your teeth do not scrape together when you kiss. You do not bump noses or elbows. Matt and Josie had a pattern. When they started making out, he'd lean in and look at her as if he couldn't possibly see any other part of the world. It was a hypnotism, she realized, because after a while, she sort of felt that way too. Then he kissed her, so slowly that there was hardly any pressure on her mouth, until she was the one pushing against him for more. He worked his way down her body, from mouth to neck, from neck to breast, and then his fingers would do a search and rescue mission below her waistband of her jeans. The whole thing lasted about 10 minutes, and then Matt would roll over her and take the condom out of his wallet so they could have sex. Not that Josie minded any of it. If she was going to be honest, she liked the pattern. It felt like a roller coaster, going up a hill, knowing that what was coming next on track, and knowing, too, that she couldn't do anything to stop it. They were in the living room in the dark, with the television on for background noise. Matt had already peeled off her clothes, and now he was leaning over like a tidal wave, pulling down his boxers. He sprang free and settled between Josie's legs. "Hey," she said as he tried to push into her. "Aren't you forgetting something?" "Aw, Joe, just once. I don't want there to be anything between us." His words could melt her just as surely as his kiss or his touch. And she already knew that by now. She hated the rubbery smell that permeated the air the moment he ripped open the Trojan packet and stayed on his hands until they were finished. And God, did anything feel better than having Mac inside her? Josie shifted just a little, felt her body adjust to him, and her legs trembled. When Josie had gotten her period at 13, her mother had not given her the typical heart-to-heart mother-daughter chat. Instead, she handed Josie a book on probability and statistics. "Every time you have sex, you can get pregnant or you cannot get pregnant," her mother said. "That's 50-50. So don't fool yourself into thinking that if you only do it once without protection, the odds are in your favor." Josie pushed at Matt. "I don't think we should do this," she whispered. "Have sex? Have sex without, anything." He was disappointed. Josie could tell by the way his face froze for just a moment. But he pulled out and fished for his wallet, found the condom. Josie took it out of his hand, tore open the package, helped him put it on. "One day," she said, and then he kissed her, and Josie forgot what she was going to say. This is another scene of these teenagers, mind you, sexual activities here. They were on the floor of the living room, and they were nearly naked. Josie could taste fear on Matt's breath, but she must have tasted like that too. They both drunk a few at Drew's, not enough to get wasted, just buzz. Enough so that Matt's hands seemed to be all over her at once, so that his skin set fire to hers. She'd been floating along in a haze of familiar. Yes, Matt had kissed her, one short, then a longer, hungry kiss. His hand worked open the clasp of her bra. She lay lazy, spread beneath him like a feast, and he pulled off her jeans, but instead of doing what usually came next, Matt reared over her. He kissed her hard so that it hurt. She said, pushing at him. "Relax," Matt murmured, and then he sank his teeth into her shoulder. He pinned her hands over her head and ground his hips against hers. She could feel his erection hot against her stomach. It wasn't normally this way, but Josie had to admit that it was exciting. She couldn't remember ever feeling so heavy, as if her heart were beating between her legs. She clawed at Matt's back to bring him closer. "Yeah," he groaned, and he pushed her thighs apart, and then suddenly Matt was inside of her. Pumping so hard, she scooted backward on the carpet, burned the backs of her legs. "Wait," Josie said, trying to roll away beneath him, but he clamped his hand over her mouth and drove harder and harder until Josie felt him come. Semen, sticky and hot, pulled on the carpet beneath her. Matt framed his face with his hands. "Jesus, Josie," he whispered, and she realized that he was in tears. "I love you so goddamn much." Josie turned her face away. "I love you too." Now in this scene, we saw one scene where she was consensual in sex. She wanted the sex. And in this scene, we see something that's just slightly different, where she starts off wanting it, but then he starts being really aggressive with her and things kind of spiraled out of her control. And this is what we know as a date rape situation, where people who have consensual sex at other times, but then at other times it can also be not consensual. Parents did not want their children reading this book. And a teacher, I forgot where it was, but they had this to be required reading. I know I never read anything like this when I was in high school. We were still reading the classics. And I honestly think that, as the world is progressing, our children's reading should also be progressing, and kids need to read about things that are actually happening in their time. So again, that goes to why we as librarians aren't about banning books. So that's all I have for you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Blair. I am the Royal Oak Library intern for this year. Um, Today I'm going to read a small section from Ellie Wells's book Night. It's his memoir. He won a Nobel Peace Prize for this book, but it's considered banned for profanity, violence, and horror. Mind you, he was a Holocaust survivor, so he wrote about his experience in the camps. So here we go. Let us try to imagine what goes on in his mind as his eyes watch rings of black smoke unfurl in the sky, smoke that is amorphous from the furnaces into which his little sister and his mother has been thrown over after thousands of other victims. Never shall I forget the first nights in the camp that turned my life into one long night, 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget the smoke. Never shall I forget the small faces of children whose bodies I saw transformed into smoke under the silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames that consumes my faith forever. Never shall I forget the silence that deprived me from all eternity of the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments that murdered my God, my soul, and turned my dreams to ashes. Never shall I forget those things, even where I condemned to life as long as God Himself never. It was then that I understood what had first appealed to me about this young Jew, the grace of a risen from the dead, yet still hold captive in the somber regions into which he had strayed, stumbling over corpses. For him, cry of anguish at almost physical reality. God is dead. The God of love, of gentleness, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had, under the watchful gaze of this child, vanished forever into the smoke of the human holocaust demanded by the faith, the most of all idols. And now, how many devoted Jews endure such a death on the most horrible day, even among all those other bad days when the child witnessed the hanging, yes, of other children who tells us had the face of a sad angel. He heard someone behind him groan, "For God's sake, where is God?" And from within me I heard the voice answer, "Where is he? This is where hanging here from the gallows." On the last day of the Jewish year, the child is present at the solemn ceremony of Rosh Hashanah. He hears thousands of slaves cry out in unison, "Blessed be the Almighty, not so long ago he too would have knelt down with such worship, such awe, such love. But this day he does not kneel. He stands, the human creature, humanity, and offers in a way that are inconsolable, with the mind and the heart, drive blind and deaf, diverse." So, in that short little passage, mind you that Rosh Hashanah starts on Saturday night. His journey into the camp started on the day of the Jewish New Year. So, this book explains to the world of what happened in the camps and what happens to him. It's a very short book, but it's a very